Hello students, today we will see the contents of Unit 6, that is software testing. First we will see what is software testing. Software testing is a process of evaluating a system by manual or automatic means and verify that it satisfies the specification requirements or identify difference between expected and actual results. Effective software testing will contribute to a delivery of higher quality software product, more satisfied users, and lower maintenance cost, more accurate and reliable results. In general, aim of testing is to confirm the quality of software system by systematically exercising the software in carefully and controlled conditions. We will see why should we test. Launching of software without testing may lead to a cost potentially much higher than that of the testing, especially in the system where human safety is involved. It is difficult for software developer to point out the errors from own creation. Who should do the testing? Many organizations have made a distinction between development and testing phases by making different people responsible for each phase. Testing requires the developers to find the errors. What should we test? We should test the programs and responses to every possible input. It means we should test for all the valid as well as the invalid inputs. Principles of software testing. The principle states that all the tests should be made according to the customer's requirement. It should be planned long before the testing begins. It should begin in the small and progress towards in the large. Exhausting testing is not possible. It also says that testing requires that the objective of a testing should be clearly defined before the starting of the testing. Test methodologies and process should be clearly understood and verified before the starting the test. Defect preventions and defect detections are the two important aspects of a system that the testing addresses. Testing strategies. The first strategy is the test objectives. The objectives should be properly defined well in the beginning. Test levels. The test strategies describes the test levels to be performed. There are primarily three levels of testing: unit testing, integration testing, and system testing. In most of the software development organizations, the developers are responsible for unit testing. Individual testers or test teams are responsible for integration and system testing. Next, roles and responsibilities. The roles and responsibilities of the test leader, individual tester, and project manager are to be clearly defined at a project level in this section. This may not have any name association, but the role must be very clearly defined. Testing strategies should be reviewed by the developers. They should also be reviewed by the test leads for all the levels of testing to make sure that the coverage is complete. Both the testing manager and the development manager should approve the test strategies before testing can begin. Next, environment requirements. Environment requirements are an important part of the test strategy. It describes what operating systems are used for testing. It also clarifies, informs the necessary OS patch levels and security updates required. For example, a certain test plan may require Windows 8.1 to be installed as a prerequisite for the testing. Next is a testing tool. There are various tools available for testing, but there are two major methods used in executing test cases. First is manual and second is automated. Depending on the nature of the testing, it is usually the case that a combination of manual and automated testing is the best testing method. Next is risk and mitigation. Any risk that will affect the testing process must be listed along with the mitigation. By documenting a risk, its occurrences can be anticipated well ahead of time. Proactive action may be taken to prevent it from occurring or to mitigate its damage. Next, test schedule. A test plan should be made and estimation of how long it will take to complete the testing phase. There are many requirements to complete the testing phases. First, the tester have to execute all the test cases at least once. Moreover, if the defect was found, the developers will need to fix the problem. The tester should then retest the failed test cases until it is functionally correct. Last, the tester needs to conduct regression testing towards the end of the cycle to make sure the developer did not accidentally break parts of the software while fixing the another. This can occur on the test cases that were previously functioning properly. Test schedule should also be document the number of testers available for testing. If possible, again assign test cases to each tester. Last is the regression testing. Regression testing is particularly used when the problem is identified, the programs are debugged, and the fix is applied to the program. To make sure that the fix works, the program will be tested again for that criteria. Regression test will make sure that one fix does not create some other problems in that program or in any other interface. So, a set of related test cases may have to be repeated again to make sure that nothing else is affected by a particular fix. We will discuss some of the terminologies. Very first is errors. People always make errors. It is a good synonym for mistake. This may be a syntax error or misunderstanding of specification. Sometimes it can be a logical error too. When developers make mistakes while coding, we call them mistakes. That mistakes bugs. A fault is a representation of an error. When representation is the mode of expression such as narrative text, data flow diagrams, ER diagrams, source code, etc. Defect is a good synonym for the fault. A failure occurs when the fault executes. A particular fault may cause different failures depending upon how it has been exercised. Tests, test cases, and test suites. Test and test cases terms are used interchangeably. In practice, both are the same and treated as a synonym. Test case describes an input description and an expected output description. Here we can see a test case template which has a test case ID. Here two sections are available. Section 1 which gives the contents before of the execution of test case and section 2 which describes the contents after the execution of test case. Before execution part consists of purpose, preconditions, what are the inputs given to the module or a program, expected output, post conditions, who has written that test case and on what date. Section 2 after the execution gives execution history. It provides the result whether the test is positive or negative or it has been passed or failed. If failed, any possible reason. What are the possible reasons or why are the test failed? Any other observations, any suggestions, and who has executed or run that test with the date. The set of test cases is called a test suite. Hence, any combination of test case may generate a test suite. Verification and validation. Traditionally, testing is used to refer the testing of code, but in practice, the design and requirements can also be tested. For testing, only program code is not sufficient. Defects may get injected in software design or even in the requirement specifications. In such scenarios, delays testing till completion of coding will incur significant resource loss. So, the two important terms are needed to be explored to understand the ways of quality improvement and defect detection. That is, verification and validation. Verification is the process of evaluating a system or a component to determine whether the product of a given development phase satisfies the conditions imposed at the start of the phase. Validation is the process of evaluating a system or a component during or at the end of the development process to determine whether it satisfies the specified requirement. Testing is a combination of verification as well as the validation. There are three levels of testing: unit testing, integration testing, and system testing. Unit testing. There are a number of reasons in support of unit testing than testing the entire product. The size of a single module is small enough that it can be located and error is fairly easily identified. The model is small enough that we can attempt to test it in some demonstrable, exhaustive fashion. Unit test comprises the set of tests performed by an individual programmer prior to the integration, which illustrative into a larger system. The unit testing, the units will be tested individually one by one. Next is the integration testing. It is a level of software testing where individual units are combined and tested as a group. The purpose of this level of testing is to expose the faults in the interaction between the integrated unit. The test drivers and test stubs are used to assist the integration testing. Here we can see the interaction between the two modules or two units that is tested in the integration testing. And the last is the system testing. Of the three levels of testing, the system level is very close to everyday experience. We test many things: a used car before we buy it, an online cable network service before we subscribe it, and so on. A common pattern in this familiar form is that we evaluate a product in terms of our expectations, that is the customer's expectations, not with respect to specifications or standards. Thanks for listening.